Welcome to the Canny Conversations podcast, Conversations with a Cause with social entrepreneur Safaraz Ali. In this episode, Dr Richard Fallon talks to Saf and Adrian about how technology is transforming Birmingham and the West Midlands. So, let's join the conversation.
Hello and welcome to Canny Conversations. These are conversations with a cause that we hope will captivate your curiosity cannily. And I'm sure it will today because, Seth, we've got a guest, haven't we?
We've got a lovely guest, a gentleman, a true gentleman.
We are honoured. You'll pay me later. We're honoured to have with us Dr Richard Fallon. And we're going to talk broadly in the next little while about technology and the way that technology affects business. And we couldn't really have a better person to talk about that than Richard. PhD, I think, in light, wasn't it, Richard?
Yeah, it's called photonics. So photons, small particles of light. So electronics doing clever things with electrons, photonics doing clever things with photons.
Fiendishly clever, I hate him. But he's a nice guy. Saf, as well, involved in technology in terms of his business, and he, the conversation I think we'll look at as we move forward is, what Richard is doing in the technological field, but also, some of the practical applications of technology in terms of supporting business. But what I want to do is begin by just talking about the Midland perspective, if you could, Richard. Because I know you do a lot of work with the universities in this part of the world. That's the English West Midlands. So, very briefly, Richard, what are we good at and what are we less good at in this part of the world?
Very good question. The West Midlands, we are very, very blessed. We have world-class universities, and we have numerous world-class universities. So you've got Aston, you've got University of Birmingham, you've got Coventry, you've got Warwick, you've got Wolverhampton, you've got BCU, Birmingham City University. There is so much amazing stuff here. Yeah. It's a great opportunity for businesses to move ahead. We've got Birmingham Tech, which is doing the IT part of technology. I have to say to people, technology isn't just IT, which is what people kind of often boil it down to, isn't it? Tech. So we do have some amazing things there. We've got things like West Midlands 5G. That's really leading the way. I know one of our members, AE Aerospace, was the first manufacturer to use 5G. And they're doing some amazing work. So I think there's a thing there that we've got lots of opportunities here. I think one of the things that what I know we're finding with some of our manufacturers and engineers, it's like some of them, it's just bringing them forward. I had a call with one gentleman the other day, very nice man from the Black Country, who said to me, nothing's changed here since 1962. Please help. So there's a thing there about moving some things forward. And what really about him was he realised that they wanted to move the business forward. It needed to change. They were kind of looking at how can we do things more efficiently, more productively, and that's what technology allows you to do, doesn't it? Allows you to kind of get rid of those boring tasks, automate them, and get on with the stuff that makes you money. I mean, we deal a lot with food and drink manufacturers, and obviously, if you've got an orchard or you've got a cherry orchard or something, getting it picked is proved harder since we moved out of the EU. They haven't got the workers there, so looking at robotic arms to pick cherries and apples. So there's some amazing stuff going on. Like I said, how can we automate the boring stuff that doesn't really add value, freeing up people to do the stuff they like and the fun stuff which does add value.
So your family originally came to Birmingham because of the industry, heavy industry at the time, but I guess at that time also probably at the cutting edge of technology. I know your dad did a lot of work most of his life, I think, with IMI. Yeah. When you came to Birmingham, the city was still, I guess, very much dominated by heavy engineering, very big on the automotive side. At Longbridge in South Birmingham, we've got the Austin Works, we've got Jaguar, who are still here in part. Over the years, how have you seen this area change in terms of business and technology?
Yeah, I mean, I'm impressed that you remember my dad worked on IMI. Yeah, he was at IMI Halford in Whittle, and he was a furnace preparer, blue collar job. He did that for 28 years or thereabouts. That was his thing, and he progressed from the shop floor and became a bit of a team leader, and obviously trained to do that. Myself, my degree is something very simple, banking and finance. It's nothing too complicated, like Richard's. That's the sector that I was in because it was a growing sector. Financial services, banking, the professional services sector was where the jobs were and where the industries were. And at the time, it was all about those sort of areas, really: banking, legal, accountancy, the massive growth areas. Similarly, my other brothers, they were very, very similar as well in terms of qualifications and sectors. So I went into the banking sector, and banking was one of the areas where technology really took off in terms of in terms of becoming lean and agile and changing the face of that particular sector. In terms of even training and what's behind it, and the whole sector now is completely different to the banking sector that we were. We had these big four or big five, and now you've got these challenger banks, and you've got different ways, and you have different ways of payment, and it's really spread. And what you found is, and it's allowed people who are innovative, who've got an idea, to actually enter and change the market. So if you've ever heard the story of Starling Bank, how an individual lady really who was in the corporate sector came in and really completely sort of challenged the whole market and really looked at the whole element of the market, and really disrupted that element. So disruption is a big thing in some aspects of it, and that word is there to really look at our traditional way of thinking. And what you find is that technology is there's an element of digitalization. So people look at what can they digitalize. You used to have paperless offices, but it's much more than that. It's about becoming lean, becoming more efficient, being able to do more, quicker, responsive service. It's all of those sort of things that come in. In our business, it's looking at that. It's also looking at how we collaborate, how we sort of check on things. How do we ensure the fact that the individuals are able to do more valued work as opposed to traditionally, into the admin office, photocopying, filing, and so forth things. Those have very little value now in that. You can sort of delegate that or outsource that, or try and eliminate that really within the business.
Richard, what brought you into science? Why did you decide to be a scientist?
Excellent question. When I was at school, when I was young, I was always interested in how things worked. I always had this thing from a young age, the picture of me with scientific goggles on when I was 4. I was just really intrigued to see how the world worked and how things worked. And it just got me thinking, actually, how do you solve things? And it suited my logical kind of thing. Well, if you do this, this will happen, that will happen. So I just found that really interesting. So I really liked doing physics at school. I did my degree in physics, then left that to find nobody wants anybody with a degree in physics. It's kind of useful if they tell you before you do your degree that when you go for a job, everybody's going to say to me, everybody said, we don't want physicists, we want electronic engineers. Okay, I'll go and do a master's in electronic engineering, which I did, and then I went and to do my PhD. And I got to admit, I did have a really good 3 years during my PhD, did enjoy it, got out to travel, spoke in America, spoke in the UK quite a few times, but I was in the ground lab on my own for 3 years, seeing neither daylight or people, and started to think socks and sandals. Sounds like a good combination. I think I need to get out more often.
Did they let you out at night? You're such a gregarious person. I'm just wondering if you were sort of making up for lost time, having been locked away for 3 years.
Quite possibly.
I can't hear. Saf, can you imagine Richard being on his own?
I'm having a complex now, just sitting here thinking, Oh God, yeah.
You've ever been interested in science and technology in terms of a career, Saf?
I used to watch Tomorrow's World. We were having a conversation earlier on, and Richard mentioned the fact that he got on this. So I used to watch Tomorrow's World, and some of the changes there. If that counts, yeah.
Yeah.
For those people who are not of a certain age, Tomorrow's World is a programme that used to be on BBC television.
Yeah.
When we were children. Let's move on now and talk about culture, because how do we compare, in your view, Richard, with those places that are associated with the cutting edge of technology and innovation, places like Silicon Valley, places like China, countries like Israel? I mean, in this country, I suppose the big technological innovative corridor is sort of around the universities, Cambridge, Oxford. Is that all a bit unfair, and is it much more widespread than that? Because you've talked about some of the good things going on in the West Midlands.
Yeah, there is a lot going on here. And I know Yanis from Birmingham UK's done an amazing job of pulling the tech community together in the West Midlands, because there is a definite thriving tech scene. Obviously, there's a big one in London, but I think for a lot of tech firms, Birmingham's got the advantage of being in the centre of the country means it's easy to get places, but it's a lot cheaper than like having an office, renting or living in London. So I think there's lots of advantages there. It's interesting as well. If you look at, you mentioned Silicon Valley, they've obviously got lots of things going on. You've got Facebook, you've got all of that. But I do know we've had several unicorns from the UK. So we are producing them, and I think we just need to kind of do that, is kind of incubate our businesses, get them going. And I think from the adoption of technology, we have the amazing Manufacturing Technology Centre in Coventry. And that is an amazing place to go and have a look around. I went and had a look at that. They're doing stuff like 3D printing car engines, which is awesome. But they've also got a thing they call it a factory in a box. You put in a broken mobile phone, I think it was a Nokia one, and it goes round and it automatically takes it apart, fixes it, finds what's wrong with it, fixes it, and comes out the other end. So you call it a factory in a box. So you've got some amazing solutions that are going on around there. And I think we have a potential for doing a lot of tech. But as you said, the universities will help drive that. I think Birmingham Tech will help drive that. Tech Nation, Naomi's doing a fantastic job with Tech Nation, bringing those people together, because I think people tend to work best in like the communities, like whether that's through Innovation Birmingham. They've got some amazing offices there where people can meet. They do Tech Wednesday on the third Wednesday of the month, which is always a good event. But I think with tech, there's so many options to do some amazing stuff. And I was talking to the West Midlands Innovation Alliance. They're actually setting up a cyber arm with their smart city, because they think the West Midlands could be great for cybersecurity. I'm running that. I know the UK is the only country in the world that can actually both defend themselves from a cyber attack and attack other countries, actually go back. So we're the only country in the world that can do both. Has got the potentiality of doing both those things. So I think there is some amazing stuff we could be doing in the West Midlands, definitely.
I mean, talking about technology, and you Richard, sort of went into technology, got into science and technology, I guess through people might consider to be a traditional route. Presumably you did A-levels and then you went to university and you did a degree and then you did a master's. But Saf, you're a great champion and knowledgeable about the apprenticeship sector, and I just wondered, are there ways that people can get into science and technology through the apprenticeship route?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got now cyber qualifications, you've got digital qualifications, marketing qualifications. So when you look at technology per se, the market in terms of it's not just about IT hardware and IT software. There's so many different things and so many niches within that. I mean, one of the things that I'm really sort of impressed with in terms of Richard is the innovation awards that they're currently doing, again highlighting the innovation that's out there. We're very good at in terms of actually coming up with ideas, patenting those ideas, and trademarking. From a marketing perspective. But sometimes it's about having that team around you to exploit and really scale up that element of it. So I think the ideas we're not short of. It's the implementation sometimes that we've heard, but unless you're in that sector, unless you're living or breathing it, you're not necessarily exposed to all the good stuff that's out there. We keep hearing the same thing again from in terms of the news. There's a shortage of labour. There's not enough hospitality staff, not enough care staff, not enough HEV guys. But there's a shortage of real engineers, a real shortage in terms of the things that add value. JCB is a big supporter of apprenticeships, continuously supporting year on year. British Aerospace have now made an announcement in terms of the apprentices that they're going to do. There's a lot of good stuff out there. So if you're attuned to it, you'll start seeing more of that. But what happens is that sometimes we're our circles, or it's the news isn't there, or what we get in terms of news, isn't necessarily the thing that we're talking about in terms of the opportunities.
Richard, what do you think about the apprenticeship route into technology?
I think it's I think it's brilliant. I think the idea that everybody should go to university is people need to look at apprenticeships, because I think it's a very good way of getting into something practical, getting hands-on. We really, really need more people doing them as well. I know from universities there's 3,000 law graduates for every solicitor's placement every year. So you end up with lots of people like that. Whereas manufacturing, especially advanced manufacturing, we need more apprentices in it. And I think the degree apprenticeship is brilliant as well. If you want to get a degree and have some university experience, then the degree apprenticeship is a great way to go. But get paid, learn on the job. Perfect.
Yeah.
If you had your chance again, would you have considered that route? Presumably that wasn't available when you, although you're very young, that presumably wasn't available, the apprenticeship route into.
It was, but I think I know when I went to university, I think 19% of the population did. So people went to apprenticeships, people went into the forces, people did other things as well. I think if I was looking now, I would definitely be looking to do a degree apprenticeship with somebody, or doing apprenticeships and doing a degree afterwards. Because I think with the cost of how much it costs to go to university and all of that, I think now it's just looking at other routes is definitely a good idea.
Just picking up on that, there's been a period where, as I said, you were the minority going to university, and it's a big claim to fame to say, I'm the first to go to university. Now it's like some people are saying, well, I'm the first to go into an apprenticeship in my family. Obviously, government targets to say 50% of people, or the population, they want to go into university. That's probably hasn't worked in our favour, because what's happened is that we're overrepresented in some aspects of it in terms of certain courses, and what you find is that then when the graduates come out, they find that there's no job out there, it's very difficult out there, and they're having to start at the bottom rung of the ladder, and sometimes not finding the jobs out there at all. So they might find a job in something completely different, where they're not utilising their experience or their qualification.
We hear a lot now, and you alluded to it earlier on, what I'm going to sort of talk about now, about the knowledge economy and the need for people to, get the skills they need to go into sort of high-tech jobs and that sort of thing. But do either of you think that's slightly overdone insofar as, if you look at the time we're doing this podcast, there's a lot of shortages in skilled jobs, HGV drivers. I wouldn't want anybody to say that's not a skilled job, because it is. A lot of skills in, care, which SAF is an expert in. So do you think we apply the term skills perhaps a little bit too narrowly, and do we focus too much on what I call high tech?
It's a really, again, an excellent question, Adrian. I think there's a thing there about skills and everyone does something is skilled. Do you know what I mean? It's not thing, isn't it? It's like, well, that is a skill. That's an ability, something you've done, you've repeated numerous times and do really well. And I think that's often forgotten, is you can't just take somebody off the street and put them in straight into something, because you can't teach experience. And this is the skills. And I think there's a thing that we need to focus on what's needed, as you said, HCV drivers. that's a skill. We definitely need more of them. I think what we're moving into is where people have a career. There's no longer going to be the job for life. I think you're always going to have to be learning new things because new things always come out, don't they? And I think there's going to be a thing of going, well, what I'm doing now might be in 10 years' time doing something very different. Now, obviously, I've moved because I've kind of went, well, I fancy trying this, doing this. But I think there's always going to be that challenge to stay on top of things. But it comes down to transferable skills, doesn't it, as well? Because we all have skills that, whether it's speaking or presenting or managing time or getting on with people, communication, time management. These are all transferable skills that will go from a job to another job.
There's a time when people used to go to university to prove to an employer the fact that they've got the ability to learn and develop themselves. That was one of the aims as well. It wasn't just about knowledge from a university. It was about the ability that you can absorb knowledge, you can learn skills, and you can adapt, and you're in a position where you've demonstrated that. And that was, I said, how degrees have been sold many times to individuals to say that's how you demonstrate that. Absolutely. We've got to stay relevant, we've got to stay current, and we've got to be in a position where we can learn new things. Technology is part of that, being even to a certain level, apps and various other things and tools. Talking from my personal perspective, I wasn't an avid fan of Skype or Zoom or any of this online thing. Now that's part of our day to day. Even in terms of diary management, basic things like using Outlook for calendar management. I was a very much traditionally a notebook guy in terms of diary management, and this is now how we do things. And having even simple things like having emails on your phone and on all these sort of devices that we have in terms of management, workflow management. It's just how things are. In terms of skills, I think there's we talk about knowledge and skills and behavior. Behavior is something that we still look at in terms of the mindset of the individuals. Are they teachable? Are they coachable? Are those individuals wanting to grow? Are they green to grow? And then you look at what skills do they, what's their starting point, and then really develop those. And that's how we tend to say to look at things.
I really like that. I really like that. I talk a lot to graduates. I always talk about success and said, you need to know what to do. You need to know how to do it. So you've got that. And university gives you a lot of that. So this is what I do. This is, I know how to do it. The thing they tend to forget, and I often really stress with graduates is, but it's all about you, isn't it? Because it's you doing it. Yeah. So you might have a brilliant idea, but if you struggle to get out of bed in the morning, even though you know exactly how to do things, it's not going to work. Yeah. So I think there's a thing there about having that mindset of being always open to growth, learning new things, trying new things. And I think people sometimes you just have to think, right, get self-confidence, go and get motivated and kind of get going and apply some of this stuff. Because pretty much you could teach anybody pretty much anything, but they've got to be open to learning, don't they?
Absolutely.
And taking the opportunities.
And more and more people now need to take a bit more ownership over their own learning as well. Not necessarily just rely on the employer, but also be in a position where you can develop skills and you can learn. And we often talk about possibly learning at 11 o'clock, applying at 12 o'clock. We do it in our lives. So if somebody, if you're doing DIY or something, and you want to apply something, you go to YouTube and you learn from there, and you'll apply it. And that happens in work. I've said it earlier on, in our previous podcast, the fact that from a networking perspective, how to do a sort of elevator pitch. You can learn. YouTube is a tool. You can learn that, and you can apply that. You look at your own sort of learning styles. If it's audio books, if it's the YouTube videos, if it's learning by watching others. And there's so many different ways of doing things. Even going to events and you're continuously learning from different ways of different. That's.
I think as we kind of move towards a close, you just raised something which I'd like to both of you to discuss, and that is what impact this COVID has had on technology, because for all the awful things it's done, it's actually, I think, it used to take a decade to produce a vaccine, and suddenly needs must, and it's been done much more quickly. There are a lot of people now that are using technology. You know, you look at perhaps older people who would never dream of learning how to use a computer or a tablet, but because it's been the only way that they can, meet the family and see the grandkids, and that they've learned how to do it. You know, to some degree, for all its awfulness, do you think that, in a sense, what we've been through in the last 2 years has actually been a bit of an accelerator in terms of understanding and exploiting the benefits of technology?
Yeah, I think it's had a really big impact on that. I noticed one of the things I used to do was go around doing lots of meetings, whereas now I find I use Calendly, which is an amazing tool so people can book into your diary. You make slots free. I really recommend you block some time out. It's the first time I used it, I went in Monday mornings when I had meetings solidly from 8 till 6. There wasn't a lunch break, there was nothing. I just got done. But they set in Calendly, and that sends them a Zoom link. And then you can get in meetings far more efficiently. Now, to be honest, I think prior to that, I would never really have thought doing a Zoom with somebody. I'd have always said, let's meet for a coffee or let's go and have a chat. And I found with a lot of our members, it's having a discovery call, like having a 30 minutes on a Zoom. That's a lot easier rather than traveling out there, traveling to your next one, because then it always seems to be that if you ever meet anybody, your meeting always lasts an hour. I don't know why that is. It is, but on a Zoom you can do something similar in about 30 minutes. So I think that's definitely accelerated that. I think you're exactly right, Adrian, the fact that some people might not have used tablets, computers, and are now doing that. And I've noticed as well with manufacturing, I think there's been a drive to how can we kind of like use technology with digitization to become more efficient and more productive. I think part of that's been driven by COVID and part by Brexit, going, we need shorter supply chains. We need to be closer to each other, but we need to look at what can we do. So I think it's brought a lot of challenges, and I think Zoom and those types of things and Teams, MS Teams, were big saviours really of the
absolutely
from COVID. Because I think otherwise, can you imagine faxing everybody? Do you know what I mean? It's like if it happened in the 80s, you would have it would just have been phone calls, but with your ears burning. But
absolutely.
Are you more technically savvy because of COVID stuff?
There's many tools and apps that I've used. I mean, on my phone I've got 4 or 5 apps that I continuously use now that I wasn't using before. Work-based apps and just projects and getting updates in terms of where things are. There's a lot more information out there, and what I'm finding is that I'm able to fine-tune exactly what I want a lot more quicker. I've used Calendly. I've gone on to Richard's Calendly and booked myself in for a session, and I thought that was a fantastic tool as well. And even though I've not picked it up, but I thought it was really good in terms of being able to use that. And it just saves the time of sending an email to somebody and saying, are you available at this time, or are you not available at this time, or getting somebody else to do it. It's just about efficiencies, and we're all about competitive advantage, doing more for less, really being better with our time, and being able to give more really, and then being more conscious in terms of what do we do with our time and what's going to be the biggest impact for us, whether that's something that we give time for family, or we give time for other projects or other opportunities. You've got more choice. So it's absolutely been a change. That change has been, I think, a lifelong change for all of us, really.
One day the technology might exist to be able to stop time moving on. But alas, that is not the case, at least at the moment. So it comes time now to thank our listeners and ask them to let us have any comments, any questions. If they like us, that's fantastic. If they choose to subscribe, that's fantastic. Also fantastic has been Dr. Richard Fallon, who's brought enormous wisdom and great insight to our conversation today. Saf, would you agree with that?
It's left me with a bit of inferiority complex though, but thank you. Thank you, sir. Really appreciate your time, and always good to meet with you. Good to speak with you, sir.
Always good to see you, Saf. Thank you very much for the invite and having me on.
We will be back at some point in the future, technology permitting, but now I'm going to bring this canny conversation to a close. And thank you for listening, and for now at least, bye-bye.